Let's turn our attention to something a lot more serious than a managerial sacking, and that's the developments across the world and at Chelsea Football Club. Yesterday afternoon, Roman Abramovich, Chelsea owner, came out with this statement. During my nearly 20-year ownership of Chelsea, I've always viewed my role as a custodian of the club, whose job it is ensuring that we're as successful as we can be today, as well as build for the future, while also playing a positive role in our communities. I've always taken decisions with the club's best interest at heart. I remain committed to these values. That is why I am today giving trustees of Chelsea's charitable foundation the stewardship and care of Chelsea FC. I believe that currently they're in the best position to look after the interests of the club, players, staff and fans. Now, that was yesterday. This morning, not a couple of hours ago, the club, not the owner, the club, have come out with this statement. The situation in Ukraine is horrific and devastating. Chelsea FC's thoughts are with everyone in Ukraine. Everyone at the club is praying for peace. Not long after that statement, we heard from the Labour MP in the United Kingdom, Chris Bryant, Labour MP for RHONDDA in Wales. He said, I'm worried that the British press have fallen for the Abramovich line on ceding control. Unless and until he condemns the criminal invasion of Ukraine, I will continue to call for the UK to sanction him and seize/freeze his assets. And it was this MP, Chris Bryant, who just a week ago in Parliament in the UK originally was the one who said that Chelsea should no longer be owned by Roman Abramovich. And clearly it's not what he said in Abramovich's statement yesterday, Robbie Earle. It's what he didn't say. No mention of Putin, no mention of Ukraine, no mention of Russia. And I should also point out he has denied consistently over the last 20 years having any relationship with Vladimir Putin. But this all points to something where he feels the heat is coming and he is trying to protect his asset.
And the Chelsea statement that came out, Rebecca, for a football club that generally does things very well, I thought was an embarrassment. It was very much ticking a box. It was cold, it lacked empathy, it lacked any responsibility. It was out there and it does nothing to enhance the reputation of Chelsea and Roman Abramovich. Now, there's many people and there's many layers to this who can talk better educated about a lot of the issues. Where I can point to is the football club in the dressing room, who've got a League Cup final today. And Thomas Tuchel's talked about being worried and distracted. He's talked about playing today with a bit of a conscience. And I get that because can you imagine what's going to happen if Liverpool walk out with we support Ukraine and the empathy that it's around the country? And then what are Chelsea doing? Are they wearing the same or are they not? Are they turning their head to it? If Chelsea were to win the game today, players running around Wembley, you know, cheering that they've won a League Cup, is that the right message that a club that's got Russian ownership, I know it's the stewardship's gone to a trustee board.
He still owns it.
But with Russian ownership, how are Chelsea players going to feel? It's a situation that reflects very badly on what has been a very good club.
It is a nightmare decision to make, Tim Howard, and Robbie picks up a really interesting point. The League Cup final, Wembley. We saw yesterday for Everton, Man City, Everton players coming out in the Ukrainian flag, City players wearing the shirts, no war, we stand with Ukraine. What on earth are Chelsea going to do today?
Well, yeah, it's the unity that brings everyone together. And I think that when you look at football and politics, everyone wants to keep it separate, absolutely. And so from the player standpoint, that falls all on Thomas Tuchel's shoulders, which is a really difficult task. From the side of this statement, when I look at Roman Abramovich and saying he's going to give the stewardship of the club to the Chelsea Foundation, I can only assume he's trying to distance himself from that. So assets don't get frozen, so that government sanctions don't get imposed. You know, I don't personally believe that when he says Granaskaya and Czech are in charge of the technical decisions and Bruce Buck is in charge of, you know, overseeing it as the chairman, because then that means if the sale of the club, if there was to be the sale of a club, then he wouldn't have the final decision. If they were to buy a player for $150 million or sack their manager, those people are in charge of making decisions. I don't believe that. I think ultimately those decisions still are going to come from him. So although he's tried to distance himself, he's not really done that.
It's interesting. There's an article that's come out in the Telegraph this morning by Sam Wallace that says even though he has done this and he's handed over the stewardship and care to the charitable foundation, the government, the UK government, can actually still freeze it because he still owns it. That'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Are we seeing the beginning of the end of Abramovich's Chelsea?
Absolutely. I think it's a domino effect, Rebecca, and the longer that this continues, the more likely he's going to be losing the football club.
There is apparently one interested suitor for Chelsea Football Club, according again to the Telegraph this morning, although at the moment, no change of ownership. Roman Abramovich still owns Chelsea Football Club. Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches and much more.